Hi, Jeff here. I'm parked in a parked car. Yeah, that turned off the car, so that's why the lights are on. I can't turn them off until the lights go out, right, by themselves, because I'm not going to sit there and use the key. There, they go out. Um, this this section, um, I need to do it now before I forget it, because it's easy to forget these things. Um, as I'm talking about these things and doing the other chapter things. The one I want to talk about here is the agile, the the constraint of agile um, and cloud mentality with regard to automated testing. Um, when I see and hear people combine these things in a meeting, I'm saying they've never done this before, right? They've never done this before. It just shows me their experience. Um, and I will be bold enough here to say that if you mention in a meeting, at whatever level it is, okay, that you need to do the whole agile scrum. I don't want to get the difference between agile and scrum and stuff, okay? I don't. I want to get in those differences. I'm just because most people they're going to be reading this thing. They don't. They're watching this. They're trying to get. It sounds. It's like I'm trying to make a cool sounding book, right? And so I want to introduce you to some topics. You can always dig deeper, and then we can start digging deeper to what's the difference between lean and agile and cloud. I mean, and continuous delivery and yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different things. Okay, and we can nitpick about and split hairs on this, right? I got enough split hairs where they're all gray. Um, that's not what I want to get into here. That's not the purpose of this book. There are lots of other books that will do this, and you can dig into them, and we can point to those, right? But what I'm trying to do here is show that the when you say that you got to do agile, okay, which means that you're going to be iterative, right? And you're going to be inventing as you go, and you're going to be inventing a lot of things as you go, right? Um, and it's not going to be you don't have a set way of doing things because you're actually discovering as you go. Sometimes you're actually creating as you go, and you're actually getting people to do stand-ups, short little stand-up sessions as you go, and you're verifying what's been accomplished and what you're working on now and what you're doing next, and you're trying to do all these approaches that are iterative, short, and innovative, um, because you've not decided everything up front. Okay, you're planning. It's like this river that's going through the sand, and it's just like it's cutting through and it's making its path, right? And you're discovering the path as it goes, which has a lot of flexibility and has a lot of. Some people can like that, and some people cannot like that. Okay, but when you combine this agile approach to doing whatever you're doing, um, and like in the manufacturing industry, we'll talk more about lean, right? Then we'll talk about agile, right? In the software industry, we talk about agile. And I'm not saying these are industry specific. I'm just saying that there's tending to be more one for one or not lean manufacturing, right? Um, but and then the cloud mentality is the big thing right now. It's the big thing, the whole cloud thing, because cloud means, which is very cloudy. The cloud is very cloudy because it's really fuzzy. What it means, you can have public and then private, and then different types of public and different types of private and restricted and all this. And I don't want to go into that right here. But when you've got the cloud mentality is that you need to be ongoingly. Did I invent the word ongoingly? I maybe did. It's supposed to be ongoing, right? Ongoingly. Um, in an ongoing manner, you will be, delivering because you're not trying to have a single. You're not trying to have like separate versions of anything you're delivering, and then get into when you start. Software industry has one way, kind of the build system, all that, and you get other ones have their own ways. But when you start getting to really complex stuff like cars and vehicles and the different approaches to versioning, I'll tell you, this gets really complex, and the planes, and that you've got different. I mean, this is so. I've got a colleague that works in this. It's like explained to me, I'm going, why do you have these different? Why do you have these different kind of branches of like versions, subversions, subversions? But they're different branches, and it's really, really, really deep. It's really interesting. I mean, how versioning is done in the vehicle industry and the airline industry for planes compared to software or to other things. It's just really, it's really different. It's really a challenge to kind of conceptualize it because you have all the different things, the electrical harnesses and stuff that you apply to certain things in the window types. I mean, it's just, I don't want to get into that here, right? I'd have to do a whole video about this because I'm struggling to map these together, right? But that's okay. I'm not trying to do this, but, well, but when you're talking about this whole having these versions that are no longer separate builds, but you're doing it in the cloud. You're just delivering every day, right? And it's like updating every day, and like you don't announce your features because the features are just like being updated every day. And so this is Facebook. You know, Facebook does document this stuff, right? But it's like you don't go read the guide about what's new. You just kind of just do it and experience it as you're going, right? You experience these new changes because, you know, sometimes they never document. They just say, "Hey, experience it, and you'll do that." And if people don't like it, we'll pull it out, right? Because so this whole cloud mentality is that you're putting into something that can make it allowable to be integrated into some other places and to be accessed from some more easily, to not have to upgrade and have downtimes across different regions or whatever. You don't have to shut down entire regions. You can upgrade parts of the entire system or ecosystem without people being infected, right? So that's kind of the goal of this. And so it's different than if you have to do a shutdown on or off of a more traditional kind of approach. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying that's the way they are, right? But when you combine this agile and kind of just ongoingly improving, I mean, and these are different things, right? What I'm talking about here. I'm not saying they're all the same thing. I'm just saying that these tend to be in environments, in the cloud mentality of software, we want to use the agile approach rather than the waterfall approach to do things. And that's what's usually said. Whereas we'd say this different in the vehicle manufacturing industry, right? Because you're not doing the cloud, right? Well, the vehicles are not in the cloud, okay? Maybe the voice system that you're using in the vehicle, the voice enabled system, might be in the cloud, right? But so that's all cloudy. But the car was actually built with lean manufacturing principles, right? Or others. So when you take all this stuff, and it's all this iterative stuff and daily stuff, and doing this, and you go ahead and pursue that in that way, that goes against, I will say this goes against automated testing. Because automated testing, you've got to actually have something set up and actually have it defined and documented very well. And I've tested it manually, right? Unit testing, all that. Before, and usually you tend to do unit testing. Unit testing are the kind of the easier things because you got steps you go through, right? Well, everything's got steps, but unit testing is usually like a feature, and you got to test all these things. And what you do is your feature stable, then you do automated testing of the feature. If it's a very highly testable feature that you want to do, you do this so that you don't have to do all these steps again, right? You can just do it automatically, right? But you cannot introduce automated testing for things that you don't know what you're doing, right? Because in Agile, you're going to be doing it different every day, right? So these are two different things, and they are opposed. Yes, they are opposed. And I would never suggest to do automated testing and mention that to anybody that's working in the cloud or in Agile mode in the beginning of a brand new project. You can't talk about automated testing. You cannot do it. You can talk about automated testing after you've done like three full versions of the thing, you've released it. And now you're trying to figure out what can we actually automate to speed up the development and the testing process. And then the other things we can work in agile mode, but you can't do both together. Okay, if someone can, I want to know how they're doing this, because this is super hard. Because I come up with stuff all the time, right? I come up with ideas all the time, but I have to go through them, and I first have to. People say, "Well, haven't you automated?" Because you got to do the thing first. Okay, you got to actually do it manually. To do it, you got to have it actually working in a cognitive way and in an interactive way and things. You don't just automate it from the start. I mean, you got to make sure that it works, right? That it's actually a process. Then after you've refined the process and you've got it down perfect, then you automate it, okay? You don't start automating it. That's what I'm saying. And so when I hear people saying, well, we want to do automated testing with agile, they've never done this before. They don't know what they're talking about. Because in agile, you're constantly, every day, you're coming up with new stuff. I mean, I remember working at Carnegie Mellon, and we were just like, every day we're inventing a new tool, right? Because we're working together, we're doing this stuff. Every day we're inventing a new derivative tool. So we couldn't automate the testing of what we're doing because we're coming up with a new tool or a new script or a new something. It's only after we had implemented it and then we began to do it, then we got to automate it, right? And some of the things we were doing were automated approaches to doing other things. So we were doing it. So maybe to that extent, I said, yeah, we could do automated testing. Because we were creating automated things to filter things, to do things. Okay, we were doing this. So maybe in that specific example, I was actually doing, but in the majority of what I do, I've done in my career, you have to write the scripts. You got to do all this stuff. Then you try to, after you know that it's working real well, then you automate it, right? If it's valuable to automate, because some things are not valuable to automate, it's actually better because they're so one-off or something, or so custom. Or you've got to customize your things all the time, depending on it. You don't want to automate it, right? You just don't want to. You might want to automate some parts of it, but you don't want to automate everything, because it'll take more time to create the scripts to automate it than it is to do the test. Okay, I'm not kidding. So this is why when people say, automated testing versus along with cloud mentality and agile, I question whether they've ever done this. They've actually done testing before, right? Or actually worked in the agile mode, truly agile mode, not just something you read in the book, right? Or you watched, you attended a team meeting where they're doing agile, right? It's not doing agile if you attended a meeting, right? It's not until you really dig into the agile mode and you're really doing it deep. You really understand the power of it. And I'm not saying it's always right, okay? I'm not saying that agile is always right. Sometimes it's not. But there are times when it's really right. And if you got people that really want to do it together and want to do it, then it's really cool. But you got to have a mentality to actually do this. And not everything works with this, okay? Not everything always works with agile too. There are things I would not do agile, okay? Just some things it's okay to do waterfall. It's okay. It's just fine. It works well. Proven method. But some things are good for agile, right? But not all. So that's my my car parked rant. Okay? Car parked rant. I like this. At least something funny about the people that talk about automated testing along with agile. You don't say it to engineers, okay? Don't, because you'll discredit yourselves. Talk about it as completely separate things, and in the places that we can automate things, let's automate it where it's appropriate, and let's use agile where it's appropriate. And we don't necessarily need to combine them, but we need to find out where they're best appropriate and use them when they're best appropriate, and then maximize and optimize and streamline that, right? But don't clump them together in a meeting, because you'll cause people to think that you're combining these things. It may not be your intention, but you might be making yourself look like you don't know what you're talking about to a bunch of engineers, right? So yeah, that's something to think about. I'm being vocal about this because I just see it too much. There's too much hype out there, right? There's too much hype in the meetings and things. Too much hype about talking things, and there are things I just don't mention, especially engineers, because if I know how to do that, I'm gonna become discredited. So they're not going to believe me because they say I've never done it, and I don't want to talk about things. I don't talk about things I've not done, right? I just don't. So it's just too dangerous. It's just so funny when I hear people, saying, do you do this or do that? And it's like I'm testing, and I have to ask them, do you know what that means? Because sometimes I'm trying to see if they've actually learned about it by reading Excel sheets and PowerPoints, so that's where they learned it from. So they're just repeating things they've seen, right? Rather than actually living through and doing it. That's always the fun thing, and I usually challenge people in that. And it's like, this is always the fun part, because when you start challenging people about the things that they actually know and done versus what they read, then you kind of figure it out. And then you call them out, and they don't like that, depending what culture they're from, right? So, but yeah, I've seen, over the years, I I really do appreciate people when they talk about what they've actually done, right? And I've seen a lot of people talk about things that they learned in PowerPoints and Excel sheets, from vocabulary. So they learn terminology, but they only know enough about it to just talk, just to barely mention it. But when you start questioning about whether they've done it or not, this is like, okay, so that gets really interesting. Then you got to deal with it when they're the ones that are going to make decisions really tough, because then you're confronting people that don't know what they're talking about, right? And they're having to make a decision about something you don't know about. That's really dangerous. So it's always, and this happens a lot in bigger corporations or bigger institutions too, right? So that's the risk. Whereas in the really small places, you just, really small startups and stuff, you figure it out, you learn it, and then you talk about it afterwards, and you just making sure it always works. So that's that's this video on the whole thing on combining agile and cloud with automated testing. Don't do it unless you really know what you're doing, and you can do it. But don't talk about it in meetings to people in general. So yeah, that's the cloud parked rant. Or the car parked rant, not the cloud parked rant. See, I say cloud too much, right? There we go.